My name is Michelle, and at 32, I thought I had it all figured out. 2 years ago, when I got that promotion at work, everything seemed to fall into place. The salary bump was significant enough that I could finally breathe easier, pay my mortgage, live comfortably, and even help others. That's when I decided to start supporting my parents financially. "Michelle, honey, you don't have to do this," Mom said when I first told her about setting up the monthly transfers. "Mom, I want to, I'm making good money now, and I want to help," I replied, already pulling out my phone to set up the automatic payment of $1,500 in my banking app. Dad stood there, his eyes glistening with pride and what I thought was gratitude. "We raised a good one, Sarah," he said to Mom, putting his arm around her shoulders. Those first few months were heartwarming. Every time the money hit their account, they'd call to thank me. Mom would go on about how blessed they were to have such a thoughtful daughter, and Dad would crack jokes about having a sugar daughter instead of a sugar daddy. We'd laugh, and I'd feel good about being able to help the people who raised me. But you know how they say no good deed goes unpunished? Well, I was about to learn that lesson the hard way. It started small. The thank you calls became less frequent, then stopped altogether. I didn't mind at first, it had become routine, after all. But then the requests started coming in. "Michelle, sweetie," Mom called one day. "Our coffee maker just broke down. You wouldn't believe the noise it made. We were wondering if you could help us get a new one?" Of course, I said yes. It was just a coffee maker, right? But then came the iron. And after that, the washing machine. Each request bigger than the last, each one accompanied by increasingly elaborate stories about why they needed it right now. I still remember the day I finally spoke up. I had just finished a particularly stressful week at work, and Mom called about wanting a new smart TV. "Mom," I said, trying to keep my voice gentle, "I need you to understand something. I'm not printing money in my basement, I'm earning it. And while I love helping you guys, I think we need to slow down with the purchases." The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. "I see," Mom finally said, her voice ice cold. "Well, I wouldn't want to burden you with our needs." The line went dead before I could respond. The silence that followed was unlike anything I'd experienced with my family before. Weeks passed without a single call or message from my parents. The traditional Sunday dinners I'd grown up with suddenly stopped, and my invitations went unanswered. Thank God for my sister Amy. At 27, she'd just gotten married to her longtime boyfriend James, in a beautiful ceremony that I'd helped pay for. She became my only window into our parents' world during those silent months. "You won't believe this," Amy said during one of our phone calls, barely containing her laughter. "Mom and Dad are acting like you've committed some terrible crime. They keep going on about how you abandoned them just because you wouldn't buy them a TV. Are you serious?" I couldn't help but laugh too. A TV? You'd think I'd refuse to donate them a kidney or something. I know, right? But you know how they can be. Remember when I didn't call them for 3 days during my honeymoon? Mom acted like I'd moved to Mars. As Thanksgiving approached, I decided enough was enough. Armed with homemade apple pie, Dad's favorite, and carefully chosen gifts, I showed up at their doorstep unannounced. The moment Mom opened the door, I saw the conflict in her eyes, the lingering hurt battling with the natural instinct to welcome her daughter home. Dad appeared behind her, and after a moment's hesitation, they let me in. Amy and James were already there, sitting in the living room, and the atmosphere was tense for about 5 minutes before the familiar warmth of family started seeping back in. Over turkey and stuffing, the conversation flowed easier than I'd expected. Then Dad cleared his throat and dropped what seemed like an exciting bomb. "We've been thinking," he said, looking around the table. "What if we all went to Europe early next year? Germany, specifically, after Christmas." Mom's eyes lit up. "Oh, yes, we've been planning it with Amy and James. Michelle, you should come too. It would be wonderful to have the whole family together." I sat there, fork midway to my mouth, considering the idea. A family trip to Europe? Despite our recent discord, the thought was appealing. After a couple of minutes of mental calendar checking, I nodded. You know what? That sounds great, I could use a vacation. The rest of the evening was spent discussing potential destinations in Germany, with Mom pulling out her iPad to show various tourist spots she'd been researching. For the first time in months, it felt like we were a real family again. That night, driving home, I felt optimistic. The next day, I requested 2 weeks off work for February, already excited about the prospect of exploring German cities with my family. In the weeks that followed, I resumed the Sunday dinner tradition, and each time, we'd spend hours planning our upcoming adventure. December arrived with a blanket of snow and the promise of holiday cheer. I spent weekends shopping for Christmas presents, determined to make this year special after our recent reconciliation. For Mom, I bought an expensive cashmere sweater she'd been eyeing. Dad got the latest model of his favorite smartwatch. For Amy and James, I picked out a high-end coffee machine for their new house. When Christmas Eve arrived, I took a taxi to my parents' house, my arms loaded with carefully wrapped packages. The house looked festive, with twinkling lights outlining the windows and a wreath on the door. Amy's car was already in the driveway. "Merry Christmas," Mom greeted me with a hug that felt almost like old times. The living room smelled of cinnamon and pine, and the tree sparkled with ornaments we'd collected over the years. The gift exchange started well enough. My presents were met with excitement and appreciation, though I couldn't help but notice that their gifts to me seemed hastily chosen, a generic scarf and a gift card to a store I rarely visited. Still, I smiled and thanked them, reminding myself that Christmas wasn't about the gifts. After a few glasses of wine with dinner, the atmosphere shifted. Mom kept exchanging meaningful glances with Dad, while Amy and James seemed unusually interested in their plates. "So, Michelle," Mom finally said, her voice carrying that sweet tone she usually reserved for asking favors. "We've been discussing the Europe trip. We found this amazing package deal for all 5 of us." I nodded, waiting for more information about the itinerary. What came next hit me like a bucket of ice water. "Since you're doing so well at work," Mom continued, her voice still syrupy sweet, "we thought it would make sense for you to cover the trip expenses. For everyone." The wine glass froze halfway to my lips. "I'm sorry, what?" "Well, honey," Dad jumped in, "you make good money now. Much more than Amy and James. And your mother and I are retired. Are you seriously asking me to pay for a European vacation for 5 people? I set my glass down, perhaps a bit too forcefully. "Not asking, dear," Mom corrected. "We've already decided this is how it should be, you can afford it." I looked at Amy, expecting her to back me up, to point out how absurd this was. Instead, she gave me a small shrug. "We did discuss this," she said. "It makes the most sense, Michelle. You're the one with the big salary." "This is insane," I said, pushing my chair back from the table. "I'm happy to pay for my own trip, but I'm not bankrolling a European vacation for the whole family. Do you have any idea how much that would cost?" "Don't be selfish, Michelle," Mom snapped, her sweet tone evaporating. "After everything we've done for you." "Selfish?" I laughed in disbelief. "I've been sending you $1,500 every month for 2 years. I helped pay for Amy's wedding. I bought you every appliance you've asked for. How does that make me selfish?" The room temperature seemed to drop several degrees. Mom stood up, her face flushed with anger or wine, probably both. "If you won't help your family have this experience together, then you can leave," she said, pointing at the door. "We don't need selfish people at our Christmas celebration." I looked at Dad, but he just nodded in agreement. "Your mother's right. If you won't contribute to this family properly, maybe it's better if you go." Amy and James sat there, silent supporters of this madness. The betrayal stung worse than the harsh words. The taxi ride home that Christmas night was a blur of tears and anger. By the time I reached my apartment, I'd made up my mind. With shaking hands, I opened my banking app and canceled the monthly transfers to Mom's account. Then I sent her a simple message, monthly transfers cancelled, Merry Christmas. Her response came almost immediately, this just proves what we already knew, you're selfish and greedy. Don't bother contacting us anymore. I spent the rest of the night alternating between crying and feeling angry at myself for crying. How had things gotten so twisted? When had my generosity become an expectation, then a demand, then apparently my entire worth as a daughter? The next morning, I woke up with a clarity I hadn't felt in months. I opened my laptop and started searching for vacation packages, not to Germany, but to Hawaii. Within hours, I had booked a 2-week stay at a beautiful beachfront resort for February. If I'm going to spend thousands of dollars on a vacation, I muttered to myself, it's going to be on my own terms. The weeks that followed were eerily quiet. No calls from mom or dad. No texts from Amy. I threw myself into work and planning my solo trip. I avoided social media, knowing I'd probably see updates about their European adventure. February arrived, and one day, curiosity got the better of me, and I checked Amy's Instagram. There they were, photos of them all in Germany, posing in front of famous landmarks, eating at beer gardens. They looked happy, and I felt a complicated mix of hurt and relief that I wasn't there. While they were posting pictures from Munich and Berlin, I was boarding a plane to Honolulu. The moment I stepped onto the Hawaiian beach, felt the warm sand between my toes, and breathed in the salty air, I knew I'd made the right choice. For 2 weeks, I lived in paradise. I took surfing lessons, went on hiking trails, attended a traditional luau, and made friends with other solo travelers. For the first time in years, I felt truly free, no family obligations, no guilt trips, no constant demands, disguised as requests. You seem like you're carrying a weight off your shoulders, said Lisa, a woman I'd met at the resort's yoga class. Whatever you left behind, it was the right choice. She had no idea how right she was. The Michelle who boarded the plane back home was different from the one who'd arrived. I felt stronger, more certain of my boundaries, and finally at peace with my decision to step back from my family's toxic dynamics. Life has a funny way of testing your resolve just when you think you've finally found your peace. I had been back from Hawaii for about a month, my tan was fading, but my newfound sense of independence wasn't. Work was going great, I'd started taking evening pottery classes, and I'd even joined a book club. Life without family drama was surprisingly pleasant. Then my phone rang one Wednesday evening. Mom's name flashed on the screen. I stared at it for a long moment, debating whether to answer. We hadn't spoken since that disastrous Christmas dinner, and honestly, I wasn't sure I wanted to break that streak. But curiosity made me pick up. Hello? I tried to keep my voice neutral. Michelle, Mom's voice sounded different, strained, desperate. We need you to come over, please. Mom, I don't think that's a good idea. Please, she repeated, and I heard something I'd never heard in my mother's voice before, fear. We need to talk to you in person. It's important. I should have said no. I had every right to say no. Instead, I heard myself saying, I'll be there in 30 minutes. The drive to their house felt longer than usual. My mind raced with possibilities. Was someone sick? Had something happened to Amy? Part of me wondered if this was another attempt to guilt me into giving them money, but Mom's voice had sounded genuinely distressed. When I pulled into their driveway, I noticed their house looked different. The usually well-maintained garden was overgrown, and Dad's prized car was missing from its usual spot. Mom opened the door before I could knock. She looked older somehow, worn down. Dad sat in his armchair in the living room, staring at nothing in particular. Neither of them offered me a drink or even a hello. What's going on? I asked, remaining standing. Where's your car? Dad finally looked at me, his face haggard. We had to sell it. Sell it? Why? Mom burst into tears, which was alarming enough, but what came next was even worse. It's Amy and James, she sobbed. When we were in Germany, they went to Baden-Baden. They took my credit card. We thought they were just going sightseeing, but they went to the casino. spent almost $50,000 in 2 days. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. $50,000? How is that even possible? Credit card limit, Mom whispered. Plus cash advances. We didn't even know until we got back and the bank statement came. But that's fraud, I said. You can dispute the charges. No, we can't, Dad said heavily. We had given Amy permission to use the card for emergencies. And there's more. The next half hour was like watching a horror movie unfold. My parents took turns explaining how they'd discovered that James had a gambling addiction, something Amy had known about but kept secret from the family for years. Worse, he had apparently introduced Amy to gambling, and she had developed her own addiction. She seemed so happy, Mom said, twisting a tissue in her hands. All those years with James, we thought they were perfect together. We had no idea. James lost his job, Dad added. His company found out about his gambling. They fired him immediately. Now they're both struggling. I sat there, trying to process it all. My sister, practical, sensible Amy, was a gambling addict? The same sister who had sided with our parents in demanding I pay for their European vacation was now drowning in debt. Why are you telling me all this? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Mom leaned forward, her eyes pleading. Michelle, honey, we need help. The bank wants their money. We're retired, we don't have that kind of. No, the word came out sharper than I intended, but I didn't soften it. Absolutely not. But we're your parents, Mom's voice rose. You have to help us. Have to? I stood up, anger bubbling inside me. Like I had to pay for everyone's European vacation? The same vacation where Amy and James stole $50,000 from you? We were just joking about the vacation, Mom said quickly. We didn't mean those things we said at Christmas. You know we love you. Love me? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. You kicked me out of Christmas dinner because I wouldn't bankroll your vacation. You called me selfish and greedy. You cut off all contact with me. And now you want me to bail you out? Your sister needs help, Dad said quietly. She's family. Where was this family loyalty when you were all ganging up on me at Christmas? I asked. Where was it when Amy sat there silently while you kicked me out? Why is it only family when you need something from me? Mom started crying again. Please, Michelle, we don't know what else to do. Your sister, she and James are in real trouble. They might lose their house. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. Have you considered that maybe they need to face the consequences of their actions? That maybe bailing them out won't actually help them? So you're just going to let your family suffer? Mom's tears dried up surprisingly quickly, replaced by familiar anger. No, Mom, I'm going to let my family deal with the problems they created. Amy and James need professional help for their gambling addiction, not a blank check from me. And you and Dad need to understand that your retirement savings aren't a casino emergency fund. Get out, Mom suddenly screamed, just like she had at Christmas. Get out if you won't help us. I stood up calmly, feeling strangely detached. You know what's funny? I actually came here tonight worried that something terrible had happened. I guess something did, just not what I expected. Good luck with everything. As I walked to my car, I could hear Mom crying and Dad trying to calm her down. My phone started buzzing before I even reached home, texts from Amy, begging for help, claiming she and James would change, that they just needed this one chance. I blocked her number. The weeks following my parents' revelation were a storm of missed calls, desperate voicemails, and emotional manipulation attempts. Amy tried creating new numbers to contact me after I blocked her. Mom enlisted relatives to plead on their behalf. Dad even showed up at my workplace one day, though security didn't let him up to my floor. I'd heard through the family grapevine that my parents had been forced to use their retirement savings to pay off the credit card debt. Aunt Susan told me they'd also taken out a second mortgage on their house. Part of me felt guilty, but another part felt angry that they'd put themselves in this position. One evening, I received an unexpected visit from James's sister, Kate. We'd met at Amy's wedding but hadn't really stayed in touch. "I know it's late," she said when I opened the door. "But I needed to talk to you." I let her in, curious about what brought her here. "I want you to know you're right," she said, sitting on my couch. "About not helping them, I mean. James has been struggling with gambling since college. Our parents bailed him out countless times, and it never helped. It just enabled him to keep going." "Did Amy know? When she married him?" Kate nodded grimly. "She knew. She thought she could fix him, instead." She trailed off, looking down at her hands. "Instead, he dragged her into it too," I finished. "They'd been to casinos all over the country," Kate revealed. "Our parents lost their beach house paying off his debts 2 years ago. Now your parents are in the same boat, it needs to stop." After Kate left, I sat in my darkened living room for a long time, thinking about patterns of behavior and the way love can blind us to truth. My parents had always played favorites with Amy, the pretty one, the social one, the one who married young and seemed to have it all together. Now their golden child had brought their world crashing down, and they still couldn't see that throwing money at the problem wouldn't fix it. The next day, I did something I'd been considering for a while. I researched gambling addiction support groups and treatment centers. I compiled all the information into an email and sent it to my parents, Amy and James. I included contact information for financial advisors who specialized in debt management and bankruptcy law. Mom's response came within minutes: "We don't need this, we need you to help your family." I deleted the email without responding. A year has passed since that fateful Christmas dinner that changed everything. In that time, I've learned more about family dynamics and personal boundaries than I ever wanted to know. I've also learned that sometimes the hardest choices are the right ones. Through various relatives and mutual friends, I've kept tabs on my family's situation. Mom and Dad eventually managed to pay off the credit card debt, but it cost them their retirement comfort. They had to downsize to a smaller house, and both took part-time jobs to supplement their reduced retirement income. Amy and James filed for bankruptcy. They lost their house and moved into a small apartment. Last I heard, they'd finally agreed to attend Gamblers Anonymous meetings, though only after hitting rock bottom. James's sister Kate told me they're taking it one day at a time, with frequent setbacks, but also small steps forward. "Your mom was asking about you at church," Aunt Susan told me during a recent phone call. "She misses you." "I miss her too," I admitted, "but I can't go back to the way things were." And that's the truth. I do miss my family, not the people they became when money got involved, but the people they were before. I miss Sunday dinners that didn't come with strings attached. I miss my little sister who used to call me for advice about everything. I miss my parents who used to be proud of me for who I was, not what I could give them. But I don't miss the guilt trips, the manipulation, the constant demands, disguised as requests. I don't miss being treated like an ATM with legs. I don't miss having my generosity taken for granted and then thrown back in my face as an obligation. My life has changed in unexpected ways since setting boundaries with my family. I've advanced further in my career, focusing my energy on professional growth instead of family drama. I've strengthened friendships that I had neglected while trying to keep up with my family's demands. I've even started dating again, something I hadn't had time for when every spare moment was consumed by family obligations. Last week, I received a letter from Mom. Unlike her previous messages, this one wasn't asking for anything. Instead, it contained something I hadn't expected: an apology. It wasn't perfect, she still tried to justify some of their actions, but it was a start. "We were wrong," she wrote. "We took advantage of your generosity and lost sight of what really matters. We lost you." I haven't responded yet. I'm taking my time, considering what kind of relationship I want with my family moving forward. I know now that I can love them without enabling them, that I can care about them without being responsible for them. Yesterday, I was going through some old photos and found one from that last Thanksgiving before everything fell apart. We all looked so happy, planning our European adventure, not knowing how it would all unravel. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I had given in and paid for that trip. Would it have prevented the casino disaster? Or would it have just been another step in the pattern of enabling that led us here? But then I remember what my therapist told me: you're not responsible for other people's choices, you can only be responsible for your own. So that's what I'm doing. Making my own choices, living my own life, and finding peace with the fact that sometimes the best thing you can do for the people you love is to stop protecting them from the consequences of their actions. The money I used to send to my parents now goes into my own retirement account and a charity that helps families affected by gambling addiction. Sometimes the best way to help others is to make sure you're standing on solid ground yourself.